So this is part 3 of the VSR build that I'm doing. So barrel wise, we're still using a maple leaf. We're going with the 430 602, 601. Got an Action Army suppressor adapter. We are going for the AA VSR 10 chamber. We've got some AA barrel spacers, just because I'm waiting on some filament, otherwise I'd have just printed some. Maple Leaf Omega nub, one of the silicon ones, which is an 80 degree, and a 60 degree Flamingo. So again, this isn't the best upgrades that you can do, this is just upgrades that you can do. There's plenty of other options out there, but these are all tried and tested things that I personally like and wouldn't begrudge anyone that used them. So they're a good base, especially if you're using a Cyma, because all of this fits in there. I can't remember if I mentioned this in the last video or not, but I'm going to go over it again. I'm just going to see if I've got another VSR hot block to show you the difference between some of the new sights. Apparently not, I thought I did. But basically when you get to this part, on most VSR clones, the mag catch here is actually sat inside, so this bit here is sat inside the stock. Whereas on some of the new Cymas, it's actually built into the hot block. So you've got an extra step, which is there's 4 small screws that need to come out, so you can take this plate off. And then your mag catch here sits on one spring this way, and then it's got another spring that way. So I'll go ahead and get that off first. So again, 4 small Phillips screws. So go ahead, take them off. And obviously put these small screws to the side. Yeah, I've been so busy working on a couple of projects for myself and for some others that I just haven't had the time to get this done. It's frustrating because I've got this to do, I've got a T10 that's behind me to do, I've got all the parts for, I've got a trigger from a company called Namek, which I've got to have a little look at as well. So yeah, it's been a busy few weeks. So with those 4 screws off, the plate just comes up, put that to the side, and then here is the mag catch system. Which again, if you've looked at a normal VSR, it's a bit different. So you want to hold it all, and then you want to push back and lift up. And then if you've done it right, you should be left with this. So you've got your mag catch, there's a spring on this rod, and then if I try and get a better angle, and there's a spring here. Don't lose either of these, and for the moment, put that to the side. Next up, 2 Phillips screws, or at least on this are Phillips, sometimes they are hex. 2 screws there you want to get out, and these should have some little crush nuts washers on them, so make sure you keep them as well. Most of the time the screws will just stay in there. If they do, brilliant, leave them in there. If not, you'll have 2 screws and you might have some washers on them. There you go. So each of those has got a little crush ring on. So I like to put them just back in the hot block so I know where they are. But if they do come out, just put them to the side and keep those washers, crush rings, whatever you want to call them on. And then next up, you're going to need your small Phillips again. And you've got 1 small Phillips here, which is what holds the hop adjuster. So go ahead and take that off. This is one of the common failure points of VSRs. So you get this metal arm. Oh, well, I say metal, it's not always metal. This is what pulls the adjusters backwards and forwards. So in here, you've got this here, which is what this sits on. So that sits on there and you adjust it backwards and forwards, and that's what gives you your hop. But this is plastic, this is metal. There's enough room for it to wiggle, and over time this becomes loose and can just pop out, which is a bit of a pain. So with everything loose, you can just slide it one way and that will come out. This might be tight if, where they put these holes in, again I don't know how well you'll see that, so there's a hole there and there's a little notch here. So if you remember from the first video, that's where 2 of the receiver screws go. Sometimes where they've drilled these holes, they leave some little bits of swarth in here, and the hole's got a little sharp lip, and sometimes that will catch on either this unit on the way out, or when you put a new unit in, it can catch. So just be mindful of that. This one, only a little bit, so that'll just sort itself out, but sometimes you will need to get a small file in there and just sort of deburr that hole. So your outer barrel can go to the side. We're not using any of this. I'm going to talk about hops separately in another video, but for this build, we don't need any of this, so that can just go to the side. What we do need to do is, there's a barrel spacer in here, probably about there, just a crappy plastic one, so you're going to want to get that out. If you're lucky and you've got strong hands and they've not glued this, you can get the palm of your hand on this, push in and twist it off. Other times, they give you a tool that you can put in there that you can twist it off. or you can use a big Allen key. But I'm going to see if I can get this.
Oh, your life could be a dream. Shaboom if I could take you up in paradise above.
I absolutely despise having to use pliers on anything airsoft. There you go. Probably just use your old barrel to find where the spacer is. Give it a tap. But that's generally what you might get in there, just a real basic plastic thing. Chuck that to the side. That can go to the side for now. And then we're just going to build up this hop unit, which again I've gone for the Action Army. Tried and tested, does its job, good build quality, easy to use. A few little gripes with it in terms of the BB stoppers and the adjustment. But you can get, there is TDC mods you can do for it. But you've got your little bag in there which has got your return spring, some screws, a very basic nub, and the little plate that everything adjusts from. And on this side you've got the actual chamber with the sleeve, and the adjusters are already in there. So first things first, let's put the back in on the barrel. Shove that to the side, get your back in. Again, I've gone for a Flamingo 60. And whack that on there, make sure it's lined up. Take your sleeve, slide that over, and that literally just slides in. There's like a cutout on the side here, so you just get your back in, line it up like so. And then what I like to do is take something, you can use an Allen key, if I got one, and you basically just want to push down on the patch while looking through just to make sure that it is coming down centered, which it looks like it is. So there's a few bits you need to do for this. We're gonna need the nub at this stage. There's loads of nubs out there. Maple Leaf, there's some 3D printed ones. The original ski nub, which I know has been copied to no end, but the original ski nub is very good and uses the full window. But for this bit, I like to turn the chamber upside down because you've got to put the nub in here and the spring, that return spring, sits in there. So you're going to want to go ahead and put your nub in like that. There's the nub there. Then take your return spring, and then I hold the arm and turn it upside down. Keep tension on it. And then when you've got it here, you take this little plate, which sits on in there, and you've got to try and hold it all together while then using another Allen key to tighten it all down, which I think is going to be this size. So on the underside, there's a hole here. That's your adjuster. So put that through and tighten it until you feel it bite, which it just has. That's now assembled. Obviously, we haven't done the screws yet, and this isn't held in place by anything, but it will stay there for the moment. So again, at this stage, you can adjust that hop, look through it, make sure that it is coming through nice and even, which I'm just going to do off camera because I've got better natural light behind me. Because it's a lot easier at this stage to check if it's coming through straight than have to disassemble the whole thing later. Yep, okay, so that looks like it's coming through well. Next up, what you're going to do is install these 3 screws. You've got 2 long ones, which go in from the side, and then you've got 1 short one, which goes in the bottom. And on this sleeve, you have 2 holes, which line up with the 2 side holes. So you're going to want to try and line them up. How will you see that? So there's a hole there that should line up. So you're going to want to put that in. And it's normally pretty easy because you can see obviously the silver of the barrel through the hole if you've lined both holes up. Now, one of my gripes here, and a number of hop chambers do this, not just for VSR but for SRS and TAC as well, is these screws go straight onto the barrel and they're metal tipped. So if you wrench these down, you will absolutely damage your barrel. The pressure of tightening this up against that small little snub point at the end will bend and dink these barrels. So it only needs to be tight enough for everything to be held together. You do not need to wrench them down. If you're smart, you can actually get, and this is one of the things that is a project that I'm working on, you can get plastic grub-ended screws. So the plastic will compress much quicker than the metal will. So there you can get away with a lot more pressure on those than you can with these without damaging the barrel. But again, as long as you're not wrenching everything down, you should be fine. So then we're putting this bottom one in here. And it just needs to be snug. So that's everything done there. This was the nub you get with the AA chamber. It's just your standard cylindrical nub, nothing fancy. Realistically, you don't want to use it. Just about any other nub will be better than that. Put these to the side. Next up, we have got some barrel spacers that you can just go ahead and slide those on. Oh, so on the AA chamber, you've got these two screws here. They're at sort of a 45 angle when you're looking at the front of the chamber, so they come in from there and here. And these hold your BB retaining dimple things. I don't know what you want to call them. You might be able to just see them coming in from 45 each side. They're basically what hold the BB in place when you put that mag in. It catches the first BB. Most of the time you just put sort of one turn on each of these and that will be enough. If you're finding you're getting misfeeding or double feeds, you have to play around with loosening and tightening these, because that'll affect the attention, because each VSR mag, I haven't got any to hand, while they might all look the same, the springs inside and the tension can be very different. One of the nice things about the AA that can also be fiddly is you can mess around with these adjusters to get the feeding better. But otherwise, that's it. If you want to adjust it in its current format, you have to adjust it. You have to rack the bolt, take a mag out, and then adjust through the little hole, which you'll see when it's all assembled. Or you can TDC it. For the purpose of this though, I'm just leaving it as is. See, this is what I said. I don't know whether you can see it, and I'm glad it's happened. So where there's a tiny little burr of metal in there, this chamber wants to bind right about there. So you just have to give it a little love tap to get it past. And you'll see here just a little bit of debris, which I'll just clean off now. Yeah, see, I don't know how well you'll see that on camera, but that little burr there can sometimes just catch on the chamber. So file it. Right, so slide the chamber in, and you want to make sure you line up this hole there, and then it's going the reverse and putting your hot block on. So again, I left my screws in here. So go ahead and line those up. Right, that's in there, nice and secure with those spacers in. There's no wobble. Again, this bit is different depending on the rifle, but obviously with the Cyma, we've got this little bit here. I'll try and do this on up here. It's hard to see. So you want to sort of go in at an angle. So this spring sits in a little cutout here. Then you've got that rod with the spring on it at the front. And you kind of want to just get it together so it sits like that. Then take your plate where it's got the 4 protrusions on one side. That's the side that goes face down. You've got to try and sort of hold everything together. Right, and then once you've got that on, just hold that, and then it's back to putting these tiny 4 screws back on. And then we're nearly done. And the process for how you assemble each hop chamber is different, because obviously there are a number of chambers out there. You've got a couple versions of the Maple Leaf, you've got a couple of versions of the AA, you've got the TTI, you've got the TNT. I've got my chamber, not that that's released yet, but I've got that. It's the one that I was talking about the other day. That's in two rifles there. I've got 2 prototypes, and I've got another slightly updated one that I got again the other day, which I haven't put in a rifle yet because I'm hoping to order something from Empire if they've got any stock. So I can go and pick that up because they're quite local, which is nice. Oh, one tip: if you're using Maple Leaf buckins, that silver ring that they put on the front, you only need that if you're using a clamshell chamber, because that chamber doesn't offer enough compression for the feed lips to not expand. So they get around that by giving you a ring to sort of hold it closed, but that puts undue pressure on the feed lips, which is why they wear significantly faster versus other buckins, despite being a very good buckin. When you're using a chamber where it's enclosed, you don't need to do that, because the way they've machined it, that lip is under the correct amount of tension so that doesn't bulge out at the bottom like it will on a clam style chamber. The leak is generally from in here where the nozzle goes in, and most people that build their rifles, companies, none of this is concentric, right? So everything should go in a straight line. It isn't. The hop unit ends up getting pulled down when people overdo the receiver screws, the guide rings are off, the cylinders are off. So the nozzle always ends up inevitably pushing this feed lip down, and that's where you get a lot of air escaping. maple leaf got around it by putting a metal ring around the front, but what it does mean is that ring's under a lot more pressure than it needs to be, that feed lip, sorry, and the nozzle and the BBs wear it out very, very quickly. On chambers like this, not so much a problem. So now you've got all of that together, you can go ahead and put your end cap back on, or suppressor adapter. Action Army make a standard 14mm counterclockwise one. So we're going to go ahead and shove that in because it fits nicely with the Cyma. Then you can take a screwdriver and Allen key, put that through there, and then you can just give it a little tighten down. And that's it. Only things you need to be mindful of, which you should be checking throughout the assembly, is making sure that the patch or the mound, whatever type of bucking you're using, when you're looking down, is coming through dead straight. Because if it isn't, you're going to have issues with curving, etc. Air seal on this with most buckings is going to be absolutely fine. You're not going to need to PTFE tape anything. It should be good to go. And that's it. Like, it's generally that simple. Adjusting, as I said, is done if you're not TDCing it. Allen key goes in that little hole there and you can adjust it. And what you can do is, if you put the Allen key in, you can push the little BB stoppers out of the way so that you can get a proper picture of the hop. And that's it. And then it's just a case of just going back to the last video and reassembling everything. To test the seal with everything assembled, take this off, make sure it's not loaded, put your thumb or your finger over the inner barrel, fire it, and it should stay there for a few seconds. It might creep forward very, very, very slowly, which isn't the end of the world. If it immediately just hisses and you can hear it coming out here, something's not tightened, the bucking might have split, etc. But realistically, with this sort of solid design chambers, you're not really going to get a leak. Again, I've used the parts that I've used because that's what the shop provided. There are plenty of good parts out there from various brands, and there's a lot of info online, but this is just a typical build that I've been doing for years in one way or another. Maybe the barrel might be a Crazy Jet versus this, or an Action Army 601, 603, depending on your budget. But this is a good starting point. As again, there's a lot of options, but if you've gone and got yourself a Cyma, which is fully VSR compatible, then this is a very good start, along with what I've covered in the first and second video. So hopefully that's helped, guys. If you've got any questions, as always, just leave a comment. If you think this has been useful, like it, share it, and all that good stuff, because it does help. Otherwise, guys, have a good one, and I'll speak to you all later. Bye-bye.